Hello again, folks. This is Wayne with part one of the Impossible Stock Race Challenge for Massive Orion 1. We are doing the Bulrathi first, and even though when I ultimately do a playlist, this is going to be I'm probably going to do it alphabetical order by the races, Akari, Bulrathi, and stuff like that. But this was the first one done chronologically, even if it's not the first one when you see it. We're doing the first video in post-commentary, so I can get a chance to play the map and just see if we have anything to work with. If we end up, getting completely stomped in the by turn 50, and there will be now I record all of these takes, so we'll have a failure reel when we're done with a run I ended up keeping. You win or lose, it'll be going up. You're not going to see me end up. You're not going to not hear this. No, wait a minute. You're not going to not hear this. This will be done. I will be doing the failure reel afterward, and you'll be able to see exactly what makes the map so difficult when we get to them. And this is my 6th try on this one. The first one of which was actually fairly promising, and I posted in. This is also part of Thotimx's Massive Orion 1 LP on Something Awful. And he did this map, and he lost at it. And I went ahead and took a stab at it, and did okay. Got to about 2450, and thought, okay, with a little bit of luck, this is winnable. Went back to do it for real for the stock race challenge, and I did not get the luck that we need. And yeah, one of those was a 2350 council loss. Just everybody allied with each other and voted for somebody I couldn't interact with. And that happens sometimes. But when it happens, it's not really a very fair indication of how the map is going to go. So we just try it again until we get like a nice run where the player has a chance. And we go from there. So as I mentioned in the stock race overview video, which is separate from the MOO1 introductory video itself, you might want to see both of those if you're not too familiar with the game. But like I mentioned with the Guardian, at least he's close. We may actually, since it's on Impossible, we may actually try to pluck the ripe fruit of Orion before we get done with the game. But like I mentioned, in addition to having a difficult map with the race, and stock race obviously doesn't mean much in MOO1 because there isn't a custom race option, but it will be for MOO2 when we can't do. You can't modify the races. You play them as is. So in addition to playing the races as they are, I'll also do in difficult maps on the highest difficulty. We will also have stipulations to the game. And for the Bulrathi, my rules are only you can prevent wildfires. In honor of Smokey the Bear, we will add planetology to our favored fields, which, if you don't know, for the Bulrathi are construction and weapons. The favored fields, which I should mention too, this is the first video, you might not have seen the overview. The overview one is that we have to dedicate at least 1/3 of our research into a favored field. So for the Bulrathi, we are bad at computers and we're good at construction and weapons. So in addition to construction and weapons, we're also allowed to do planetology. It doesn't make much of a difference, but I think it's a good nod to the Smokey the Bear references in Conquer the Stars, where they like uplifted the humans out of their polluted state and stuff like that. Plus, I think it's just kind of a fun little thing too. The second one is the little American politics joke. We have the right to arm bears. So if we get if a random draw in weapons has a ground weapon tech, and it's only for weapons, it doesn't apply to personal deflector shields and combat, the battle suits and stuff like that. But if we get hand lasers or hand phasers, or speaking of hand lasers, or fusion rifles and stuff like that, we must pick that tech. We can still try to loot it or trade for it, but we have to select it as a research option before we can move on. And then the last one is we are restricted to honorable combat. We cannot use bioweapons, period, and we cannot bomb planets from the strategic bombing screen. So basically, when we go back to the map after we win a battle and it says, "Hey, do you want to wipe out all sentient life on this planet?" we have to say no. And that's even early in the game. We would only be killing 1 million people with our laser fighters and stuff like that. Only killing 1 million people, right? Um, but in addition to, we can't overkill planets in combat either. So if we have an attack that takes out missile bases, we can't fire the planet again. And sometimes I may break those rules by accident and stuff like that, but we can't do that. Can't do that intentionally. For example, the I had another rule there too. I'm just scrolling off my rules page. Yeah, part of the planetology and eco-friendly Bulrathi is I also made a rule where we can't voluntarily go into waste spending. That's kind of a little nod at Thotimx because he likes micromanaging planetary waste, and I can't be bothered with it. But even if I wanted to, I can't do it this time around. And for example, like whenever you make a trade deal and you suddenly get a deficit in your GDP, then some of your planets will go into waste spending. That stuff doesn't count. It's only a couple points worth, and and that's just to avoid a big micromanagement headache. And last but not least, you have the ship size specification rule, which is that basically is, again, if you didn't catch the introductory the overview video, is every race has a modifier going off the core ship size, medium and large, and some of them will build bigger, some will build smaller. The Bulrathi are one of the races that builds big. So yeah, we are primarily doing cruisers and battleships. That covers the overview. Let's jump back to the game. So we're a couple minutes in, and the reason why I got the Earth's agents, our long-range medium laser craft, is that you can see that we just ran off a couple of Mershon colony ships and scouts. Well, the issue is that the Klakons are beasts, but the issue with the Mershon is that a lot of times you can just coast on counting on the AI only sending a couple fighters in and one medium ship with its extra HP and having 2 guns, sometimes 3 depending on when you actually build them and send them out. It can actually hold off like a small group of fighters. Generally you can take 2 or 3 with 1 destroyer. That's not going to work against the Mershon. So I end up building 2, and that sets our development on Ursa back a little bit, but it's worth it in the long run. And I have had multiple runs where the Mershon show up, and normally the AI don't start escorting. They're sending armed escorts with their colony ships or having armed colony ships until pretty late in the game. I'd say like you turn 30, 40, 50, somewhere in there. They'll do it in the teens. You'll have, I think Thoth lost that planet at, or was it my first run on there? But yeah, we lost it at like turn 16. The Merchants show up with a couple of fighters, and if you're just picketing with a scout, you have to run, and they get that planet 4 parsecs away from you before you could possibly get hydrogen fuel cells and claim it with regular craft. So you have to get the long range ships to hold that desert planet, and because you need planets. This is a very, very bad map for the player, because we're the Bulrathi, which are bottom half of the totem pole anyway. And you saw that the Klakons have plenty of room to expand. They're in the southwest, if I remember right, and the Cylons are off in the northwest. So basically, the strongest races. It's kind of like in the old Mortal Kombat games, where you start at the bottom, you have to work your way through the flunkies, and you have to fight Shao Kahn, at the top of the stack. That's kind of where we're at. We have to work our way through the mooks and until we can fight the boss. And the mooks in this case are the Mershon, which you saw, and the Alkari to our south. And those are the races with the early game combat bonuses. The Mershon, like I mentioned, have the bonus to hit to make their fighters a threat. The Alkari have the bonus to defense to make you have to invest more to fight them. And we're the Bulrathi. We're bad at computers. That doesn't affect our tech draw, contrary to popular misconception that the skill you have with the field influences how many techs you get to choose from. It doesn't actually. You get the same 50-50 shot as anybody else. But they're harder for us to get because they cost more, and thus the player is less likely to want to invest RP in that because you're paying the 25% penalty to it. So you can think of it as getting a quarter fewer techs over the span of a game if you invest in a field you're bad at. And there's an armed escort craft for the Alkari, just like, was it turn 20 or something? 25. It's early. So we get, and this is part of the thing too, that the random chance that goes into these maps. What makes this one so difficult is that, well, in addition to everything else, what makes it so difficult is that we don't get deuterium fuel cells. So we have a couple decent planets that are 5 parsecs away. We have, I think Volantis was at the Artifacts planet we just lost, and there's a ocean planet that's 5 parsecs from the Den, and both of those we have to wait for iridium fuel cells. And in my usual preference in that situation would be to, especially since we don't have propulsion as a favorite field, for us, construction weapons, planetology. My favorite trick in that case would be to invest more in early research like we're doing and try to get our construction and planetology up so we could put reserve tanks on a colony ship. And basically any combination of two increases in one and one in the other. So like Industrial Tech 9 and Duralloy in construction and Enhanced Eco in planetology, or whatever combination. Should be enough to get you to the reserve fuel tanks. And in that case, you don't need the enhanced fuel cells. And if you saw the Clacon assimilation game, which I'm doing concurrent with this one, I actually got the vast majority of a huge map with only deuterium fuel cells because I early on got planetology for hostile landings and used the long range colony ships, reserve fuel tanks on a colony ship. And stars simply aren't usually that far apart. The ones you can land on and colonize just usually aren't that far apart. So you don't really need that much longer range than what we've already got. Now, hydrogen fuel cells are a bit limited. I would go for deuterium or iridium and stop there, typically. And in this case, I've tried doing the long range thing, and those planets will all be gobbled up by the time you can research 3 more advances. So you basically have to pour research into propulsion, and even though the Alkari are nearby, and you can probably trade for it, all things being equal. That's what I would normally do, but you just can't take that long in this game. You won't get the planets. You need to get an economic base. And you have no economic advantages since we're the Bulrathi. So it's a very uphill challenge, this map is. And, okay. And this is the other thing, too, is I started research a little early compared to a lot of people, and I mentioned this in the podcast video for the Clacon series, that a lot of people have the idea that you want to get your industry on your homeworld maxed out before you start expanding. And I think that's a little too risky in this one. So what I ended up doing was kind of syncing up my, basically trickling some credits. You'll hear that word a lot if you start hanging out with the cool kids or the not really the cool kids. I guess if you're nerds about, I guess if you know about the ins and outs of Master of Magic, where you're the nerds, you're not the preps. There's still scouts. So we just got lucky this time. They didn't send any armed ships. Now, granted, not lucky because two Earth agents probably could have taken care of the 4 fighters or 1 destroyer they probably would have sent. Yeah, so we are too late. So it's turn 37 by the time we grab our first expansion, and that's a little late. You can probably get it by 2330 or so if you do put everything in industry. But then you have to go back and research your hydrogen fuel cells, and then you have to build your colony ship. So the fact that we had to get a research in before we could expand, I don't think that's too bad, especially for the Bulrathi. So the extra range and the colony give us first contact with immersion, and I forgot that part of the horrible diplo that the Mershan have is that they are uneasy with, I think, a good half the other aliens. So was it wary with Alkari, restless with Sakra, unease with Bulrathi, and I think there's another one they don't like either. That's a really nasty diplo matrix, and that's why we're at unease with immersion. I guess we just the bears and cats, the 2 mammalian races just kind of glare at each other and say, "Hey, this is my gimmick," So now that we're in the percentages, it's legal to take some research off of our preferred field, and we're going to put that into propulsion, try to max out that range 6, try to grab some planets before the Alkari get them all. I do have my eye on that dead planet to our northeast, and planetology is going to be our next pick after that. Basically, you have a 50-50 shot in the next tier of planetology to get tundra or dead. And I happen to know from failed runs before that dead is in our tree. But of course, even if I didn't have that foreknowledge, I'd still have to roll the dice anyway, just because we need some hostile landings to try to get more planets. We really are behind the eight ball on trying to expand here. So we're getting another Cub Scout to try to give us a bigger picture of what habitable planets are out there. Proved eco, very important. And there's our first arm to bear. So there's his controlled dead. We didn't get the other option in that field. I don't remember what it is, but we didn't get it. So at this point, so another thought, and I've tried this before, and I think either Thoth did too or in the game before this one. So it's like if you're boxed in with AIs in the Bulrathi, you might think it's like, okay, well this is a great time because we may not have an economic advantage, but we can put our racial trait to use with the bonus ground combat. And I've tried that, and that'll be on one of the failure reels. And so what happened is I only built one Urs agent, and the Mershan killed it and took over the sands, whatever its original name was. And so what I decided to do, since I had range 4 and I could get to Zudax as well, is I just went ahead and went for it. I sent transports in to take it, and then I sent since Zudax didn't have any missile bases yet, I went ahead and took it too, because when my scouts flew in originally in the sands, I went ahead and just had them check out Zudax after I colonized it. Or actually, I think before that, because it was within range. It was within range 4. Once we got it. And so I had the read on it, and I could send an invasion in, and so I got both of them, and I got a couple texts from I think that was late enough. I actually got Robotics 3 for the Mershan, so I was feeling pretty good about myself. But on Impossible, the AI, that's basically the phase of the game, that 100 turns between like about 2350, 2450, right around there, are when Impossible AIs are at their strongest. The raw advantages, you haven't had any option to do anything about it. You haven't had the chance to get any economic techs yet, or not very many. And part of the reason, and I think I mentioned this in one of the podcast videos too, is that what gives the human player a chance on Impossible when we're up against the crazy multipliers that they get are one, of course, that we can think and they can't. You can take advantage of. You can take advantage of scripting, when you know what they're going to do. Thoth is a big fan of kind of bombing out a planet and watching people fight over it, then try to sneak colony ships in and claim it for himself, which is really devious, and I really admire that. I generally don't stick my neck out on something I don't think I can defend, so I have a little more conservative play style. It's funny. It's like we're both conservative and aggressive in different things. It's kind of neat comparing our play styles. But yeah, so that's one thing that he likes to do, and you can kind of expect that. And for example, something I picked up on is when an AI does what I call the Lebensraum roll, when they randomly decide to break their treaties with you and try to take over one of your planets in an expansion bid, and they will always do that. As far as I know, there's no way to have a permanent alliance in the game. It's like maybe there's a certain threshold of relations that if you get past, they'll no longer do that. But then all you have to do is have it dip down once, like if you commit genocide or whatever, and then you're back to having that problem. So what I've noticed is that when they do that, and this will save my bacon in one run in the Sakra map I'm going to be playing, but it's even harder than this one. So whenever we get around to the S's, so the Bulrathi did that, and they had a completely untouchable fleet. They were running roughshod over the game, and what I ended up doing was when they did that and picked one of my planets, is I couldn't stop them from destroying it. But what I could do is use some interceptors and my missile bases to take out their colony ships. So sure enough, as predicted, it's like, well, once the they couldn't colonize it. So the big fleet just left, and when it sent in the usual colony ship plus minor escort to take an unclaimed planet they want, I was able to fight them off, take the Diplo hit for for basically fighting a brush war, a brush battle instead of an actual war. And then about 10 turns later, I was able to patch things back up with them. And so you just have to accept that stuff like that's going to happen, and you just roll with the punches and deal with it. And if going into a war would cost you the game, don't commit to the war. Live to fight another day. If the action that they take, like if they go for your home world, and I've seen that happen sometimes, and it's early enough in the game, that would be a fatal loss if you can't fight it. Just quit and try again. Just take that as a loss. Roll a different map. Do like a best of 3. And one thing I'm going to get into is if stuff happens in this game and we need to talk in the background is, well, actually, we could probably save most of that for the failure reel. I'll probably comment over that. But it really is uncanny how differently maps can play out with just pure RNG. Okay, so where we're at now is I'm trying to keep this is something you'll see me tweak the sliders with periodically, is I'm trying to balance out between having keeping the research up, because there's a bonus of, there's a 7.5% of your total research in the field, and then it's like every time you hit that amount each turn, it multiplies it. It's called that's the interest mechanic. So you kind of want to maximize that if you can. That's one of the elements of micro I actually kind of like in this game. But I can't say I like it. It's not very well thought out. Okay, well, there's our first council meeting. Let's take a break from the research, which I know I've gone over before, but it doesn't hurt to remind people of, that they don't see every video. And we'll take a look at this one. So we saw from the GNN video earlier that the Clacons are in the lead, and they have 6. Oh, I didn't dwell much on that one. They have 6 stars, and they have more by now. And so they have 6 votes, which means they have at least, I think it's like 1 vote per 100 million. So we know they either have a lot more than 6, probably like 10 planets by now, or they've grabbed some early terraforming techs. So one of the two, and either one is good news for us. That the biggest boy on the block is getting bigger. But the interesting thing is that even though silicoids are in the game, that they haven't been able to get very many planets, and we can see with their orange ships flying around that they have a range extension, probably from an alliance with the Mershan, but they haven't been able to really make a play for some of the contested hostile planets. Nothing further south from us, and no move on that dead one to our northeast. There we go. I think they just got range 6, because I don't think I've quite gotten it yet. Man, but the southwest corner, that is, I just really don't like the early cheese alliances. So here is the thing that makes this map even more difficult than it already was, as I point out there. So the Alkari and the Mershan both rolled xenophobic for this game. Now there is a bug with the AI personalities that has xenophobe pop up more often than it should, and with races that shouldn't be able to draw it. It basically, there was like a mismatch between the number of slots for personalities and the number of races in the game, something like that. I forget exactly how it happened, but it was one of the patches that broke AI personalities for most of the races. So we have 2 hostile aliens there, and it's basically a crapshoot of whether an AI and whether the other AIs either make peace with them and get those early alliances going, or if xenophobic kicks in and some faux pas or just random chance of war, which is by the way the reason I keep trying to do trade agreements with the Mershan, because having an active agreement gradually raises relations, whereas otherwise they'll tick down or tick up if you're recovering from a war, tick up, but they'll gradually resume the default state, which for the 2 of us is unease. And the further down you are, the higher the chance that they'll just randomly declare war on you. I've read according to the strategy guide, there is some math on like aggression, you're building up at your border and stuff like that. I don't know if it's bugged or what, that it never really seems to work. Yeah, there seems to be no rhyme or reason for them declaring war or not, besides the diplomatic opinion of you. So unease makes it fairly common. Neutral a little bit less so. Neutral doesn't seem too bad, but you really are walking on eggshells on that. But then once you get to relaxed or better, the odds of them randomly dropping everything and deciding to kill you is very low, unless they happen to be erratic. And erratics will do that anyway. I think it was Get Dave, to one of the other old school LPers, managed to get through an pretty much entire game maintaining peace with the Clackons, and only at the very end did he do the report on them. It's like, oh yeah, they were actually erratic the whole time. I've never seen a game go that long without that random chance of war kicking in. I'm guessing that maybe if they're at war with somebody else, they won't have that 2% chance of declaring war on you. That'd be my guess. But yeah, erratic is you just basically, I think it's like a 2% chance that if they're not at war, they'll declare on somebody, and over the span of 50 turns, that's a pretty close to guaranteed chance it'll happen eventually. But yeah, so difficult early game opponents that are xenophobic, more likely to declare war on you, less likely to accept treaties to get out of the danger zone. There's so many ways for the game to go wrong, and since you have so few planets to work with, you don't have a good economic base, that if something goes wrong and you lose one, it's all over. So, okay, so at 20%, you have to round up. It's like, I think it's like 66. I think it has to be 67% chance, basically. And it's pretty rare that matters. But so if you're at 20, the votes to get are 14. So something to keep in mind, because 20 seems to be a pretty early vote total if there are 5 AIs in the game and nobody has good terraforming tech yet. So since I didn't actually need the cruiser with lasers, which I did in one of the games, I decided to switch over to the good old resource stockpile, just to have something to build, to put points into until I can afford to get the dead colony ship and switch over to a new, or dead landing, so I can switch over to get it to a new colony ship. Yeah, the bare arms thing is that I did end up trying the early war on the early invasion on the Mercian, and take over some of the planets nearby, and then rely on cruisers, but with a theory going that with some deflector shields, I think I got class 2 shields, and they just have lasers, that with some shields and with with having ships with more longevity, plus the challenge factor too, is like I had to have cruisers being my workhorse, that I thought I'd be able to carry the day with having lots of lasers on on a ship and blowing through their fighters. And that actually did okay, until the fact that I didn't get any engine increases and I couldn't research any while I was building cruisers really came and got me, because they started building missile boats. And so I think they had either Hyper 5 or Hyper 10 rockets. Either way, speed 2.5 or 3, you're at speed 1. They just move within range and fire at you, and because they're the Mercian, most of those are going to hit. And there's nothing you can do about it if you just have one range weapons. You got to fly through the missiles before you can shoot back and try to thin their numbers. So I had the choice of either trying to do missiles of my own, which I didn't have. I had to try to use nuclear missiles, which don't really work. It takes 5, because the default hit points on a destroyer is 18. It takes 5 nuclear missile hits to shoot one down, and 3 if you can get Hyper 5s. So that's a respectable jump, but I didn't have it, and I hadn't gotten it with either of the attacks on the Mercian planets. So, and eventually, they just use missiles to gradually take out 1 or 2 cruisers at a time, and just sending endless waves of ships from their homeworld. And I think they had Spica also. I think they had that in both games. But yeah, they just had the production on an impossible AI was just more than I could deal with the Bulrathi and the limited planets I had. The Den is a great second planet. 90 population planet. Basically, you're guaranteed to have a habitable planet within 3, but it's not guaranteed to be any good. I have seen good old size 35 A lot like the Sands with its size 35. I've seen that be your expansion colony sometimes. And yeah, bad times, man, bad times. Feels bad, man. But we'll go with that one. so so we have that, but the Sands isn't really any good. And if you've had to take it from the Mershon, it hasn't been built up, and you had to sacrifice some people to get to it. And invasions are great if the planet is built up. Like if you're able to seize one in the mid game to late game, you can swipe all those factories, get a tech from them. That's really good if you can pull that off. But early on, it's a big draw. It's a big drawdown on your forces because you have to commit colonists to invade, and that takes out of your production base. Not as much of a hit as we are with the Clacons. Of course, we can afford it when we're playing the Clacons because their production is just so high in general. But you have the 1-2 punch of colonists you send out to war aren't manning factories. So if you've built up your planet fully, however many that is, they're not contributing anymore, and they're not giving you that 0.5 modified by planetology either. So okay, now point out we'll finish this thought that. So if you take the planet and you come out ahead, great. But it takes time to flip a planet you've conquered in the early game to make it profitable, and definitely to make it make up for what you had to spend to get it. And we're never able to turn that transaction, balance positive by the time the Mershon started taking over our cruisers. And then if you have to build more fleets to reinforce to keep what you've got, well, that production has to come from somewhere. And especially if you sent colonists out, you're getting less production. It's probably coming out of your research base, and then you're further behind, and you're taking even more time. So when I was looking over at the Silicoids and the fact that they're at war with the two other AIs, that's the one lucky break you get on this map that I hadn't gotten before, and that's with somewhere in the Byzantine network of diplomatic matrices and who hates who and whose ambassador is sleeping with who and who tried to assassinate, Empress so and so, that we actually got a chance to make some ground here because AIs that are at war with each other are less likely to just send the colony ships out willy nilly. They tend to keep them with their fleets because at this point, they're probably armed for one thing, but they're also there to. And the AI isn't smart enough to actually plan ahead on this, but they will try to take advantage of planets that get destroyed so they can immediately recolonize them. So sometimes you'll see this hilarious thing of like a planet that you just barely have, just barely on your frontier, like it's at the range that so we have iridium fuel cells, so it is 6 parsecs away. We'll go with that, and you'll make first contact with somebody, and then you'll lose contact with them. Then it'll come back, and so on, because as they fight over that planet on your border. It's great to watch, and of course you're knowing that AIs are just expanding resources and killing their population and their credits into fleets this whole time. So there are a couple times when the AIs will all just love each other. They'll make alliances to extend each other's range. You'll get the nonsense of some hostile planet you've been keeping in your back lines to try to keep safe for when you have the landing tech for it. The Silicoids will just walk right in and take. Stuff like that'll happen, or then you get things like I mentioned, 2350, Galactic Council loss because everybody was allied with somebody you haven't met, and sometimes it'll happen with the humans. It's really frustrating when it happens, and it's kind of funny too. I think there's a bit of karma because I mentioned in the thread that's something I can't remember too many times that happening. Well, here we are. But yeah, this time around, there's still some alliances. The Mercian and the Cylons are allied with each other, and then the Silicoids are allied with the Mercian right now. So there's still some of that, but there's also a lot more conflict, which is great because, like I mentioned, it slows down the expansion, but more importantly, is it focuses it. It keeps their attention on each other. Their fleets will be flying around, going to each other's systems and attacking them. They'll get destroyed by missile bases early in the game, often as not. And when stuff happens, like if somebody you have an aggression pact with, for example, is attacking a mutual enemy, you can send your ships in orbit after theirs, And when they attack a planet, even if their fleet gets wiped out, if they wipe out some missile bases, well, great. They'll make it easier for you to hit them. If they take it over and you have a colony ship and theirs didn't survive the battle, you're going to swipe that planet right there. And I think with the non-aggression pact, they can still attack you if they send reinforcements in and want to take it. So that you might have to worry about. But yeah, it could be a great opportunity for you if the AI are fighting each other. You just jump in and try to, gobble up what's left over. So I decided to ultimately go ahead and try to, give the Mershon something. Think twice about it. At this point, and the reason why I'm thinking that at this point is I'm doing some thinking about seeing the fleets I'm seeing and the fact that the Mershon are at war with everybody. It's like I don't want to invest any more in them than I have to because I'm probably going to attack them. So my plan here is to start putting points into computers like you're seeing, and I hate doing it. I was really tempted to make the trade with the silicoids, but I've already put half the RP needed into Battle Computer 2. So at this point, why not write it out? So I figure go ahead and do that, see what we get, and see if it unlocks Robotics 3. Because I don't think I've actually done that yet in my runs. I don't know if that's in our tree or not. And then, since I'm pretty sure we have, I think it's after Control Dead, I find out that we have Terraforming 30. So my thought is, okay, we have that's a pretty good grand slam of economic techs. Robotics 3, Terraforming 30. I don't think we had Reduce Waste 80, but we do have the Eco Restoration. That was our first planetology tech. So all that stuff put together is a pretty good economic suite. So a sweet suite. So my thought is to kind of shoot for that, and then after that, swing over and start building up to go to war with the Mershon. So keeping them off our back until then would be ideal. But as it is, it's like as long as they're at war with other AIs, I don't think they're going to just randomly declare on me. That's a gamble I'm taking. So that's why I was doing what I did in that. So Iridium has given us the range to invade planets like Spica. We couldn't before, or we would have had to hit something else to leapfrog, to island hop over that way. Then also let us get the deep. And with that access to the back lines so that the Alkari haven't gotten to, because they've been at war with people. There have definitely been runs in this game where the Alkari have gotten that entire swath of planets. So I know that at least a couple more of them are habitable than what they have right now. And like I said, I try not to abuse foreknowledge. I try to never abuse it. I try to make moves that a player would otherwise in that situation, and explain if I don't, and if not, why not. And in this case, I think that's a reasonable choice. That if the Alkari, like I mentioned, if you're expecting the Alkari to be sending their colony ships out when they're at war, if they might not have them because they've done a build-up and they haven't gotten them respawned yet, you might think it's a good chance to try to swing back behind them and see if you can grab some stuff. And that's what we do here. So now that we have the deep, I'm going to start grabbing some more scouts and trying to see what's out there. I'm also thinking quite a bit about trying to put more research into propulsion for sublight drives, because so far we're at retros, and that's cost me a game before. Not having any speed increases and trying to conquer territory, trying to conquer and hold. More like Bulrathi don't have too much problem conquering territory. You'll land on one planet, but you'll never be able to hold it. And granted, I've seen some guys on the Realms Beyond forum talk about how you can actually try to make that part of your strategy with the Bulrathi is try to conquer a planet and get somebody and if somebody sends a fleet in to bomb it and destroy it, well, then they're not looting anything from you. So you just kind of accept a loss or two in the pursuit of the pointy stick research, as some of the guys call it. And and that's your strategy. And I won't be trying to use that as a strategy, but if it happens, it happens. So the thing about ultra poor planets, and we'll get into this a little bit more too, is that they're horrible for industry, horrible for ship defense and industry. but they're usual for their size for everything else. And I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like big planets tend to be, or ultra poor planets tend to be pretty big, and the rich and ultra rich tend to be smaller in this game. That definitely seems to be the case with in that Klakon game. Yeah, that's me doing a little strategic cloning to try to get some population back after that. Uh, in retrospect, it's something to think about too. That was a little bit of a mistake. Was if you're not expecting to need the citizens immediately, you're better off to basically keep in the optimal growth curve on the planet, which in this case, since it's max population 90 at that point, 60 was in, then to basically let it grow to about the 75% full, which I guess would be like 65, 80, 70, something like that. Yeah, 70 this time around 70, and then increase your, and then start cloning. You'll have more people there. It'll be the more optimum, growth range and everything. It's a minor thing. It'll probably just save you a couple turns worth of credits, but it's not nothing. So yeah, I'm just going back through here, trying to, and this is something you'll really grapple with on Impossible, is when to bite the bullet. Oh, that's a lucky break. So, so we'll come back to that. So you think about what is the most important thing to grab when you get a successful spy hit on a race, and some people will actually print screen or just take down notes of what the spy reports get for another AI, so you'll always know what to try to grab from them. In this case, I did know that they have ion cannons, and I didn't think they had anything else in weapons. I know the Mershan had the Hyper 5 rockets and stuff like that, but I was pretty sure the ion cannons were the right bet, and I had decided to get fusion bombs instead. So I am currently without a viable beam weapon to to make my attack. And that goes back to what it so yeah, I said a 50-50 shot basically. But since I had all fields pop up, I was pretty confident in getting the best in that weapons field. So what I was starting to say before the spy hit came in is deciding when to commit to your attack is one of the most important decisions to make in Massive Orion, because you only get 6 ship slots, and each ship in the early game especially is very expensive, especially if you're trying to do cruisers like we're going to be using for our baseline. And so you want your stuff to count. You want it to be, or you want to basically you want it to be effective. If you're coming in with, like I said, you're really proud of your newfound Hyper 10 rocket ships, and you're going to build a big fleet of missile boats, and then the AIs get Jammer 4s on their fighters and get Planetary Shield 5 on their planets, plus their Deflector Shield 3s, and all of a sudden you're not doing anything. Those missile boats are a complete waste of time, and well, you can't say more importantly than time. Time is your most important resource, because I take that back. In Massive Orion 2, time is probably the most important resource because AIs keep getting stronger, and I've seen some guys get into like crazy, like hundreds of turns late in the game, and even on lower difficulties, AIs will just have massive fleets if you just give them that long to build up. Whereas in MOO1, I'd say time is mostly on your side, because as the game progresses, your economies will grow, but since expenditures like security and the planetary reserve and stuff like that are percentages, it hurts the AI a lot more than it does you, because that's a percentage coming out of their huge cheating growth multiplier. I say cheating in the pejorative sense of reminding you that's impossible difficulty and they're getting bonuses on you. I don't think it's. I mean, really, for a lot of maps, it's actually not imbalanced enough compared to how strong the player can get compared to what the AIs can do against you. But that's neither here nor there. um, but yeah, so time is on your side in MOO1 more or less, but even still. So going back to it is that if there are times when there's a rhythm to growth and combat and technology in MOO1 that I really like, and one of those is that there's this kind of push me pull you of weapons, the damage numbers that weapons get versus the construction on hit points and the shields on shield and evasion factors on ships. Evasion not so much, because the AI usually they observe the power ratings on weapons more than you do. And I haven't talked about that much because it's such a small factor that they ended up dropping it for the other MOO games. But it can be, I think the AI overvalues power ratings for weapons in this game. And that's not attack power, that's the actual power field, you know. But yeah, so I think they kind of overvalue that, and as a result, they keep their engines a little bit weaker than they otherwise would. But regardless, you know, damage versus shields versus hit points. And in the early game, so you're talking like Duralloy armor, let's say 50% increase, so 150 hit points on a cruiser, would be a typical thing. And it gets about, because half that, because planets have half the hit points cruisers do, or missile bases do. So say you have 150 hit points on a ship, you do 75 on a planet. And because it's halved, you can expect your beams to be equally effective. So you can think of a missile base as being that number of cruisers worth of hit points and shields you have to cleave through. So the ion cannon is decent very early because it does up to 8 points of damage. So if a planet has no planetary shield, no class 5 shield, and so up until they get class 4 deflectors, basic ion cannons are actually effective against planets. And even if they do, heavy ion cannons are viable up until class 7 deflectors. Now, it's very rare that an AI will get class 7 regular shields before they get any planetary shields, but it can happen. Oh, we finally make a deal with Kitty. You know, Miss Kitty will take 30 credits worth of catnip. That was a little bit of a mistake on my part. I trade Battle Computer 2 because I know everybody else has it, so I figure they can trade for it. But I probably should have given them Deep Space Scanner, because since Deep Space Scanner is only level 1 or level 2, I think, 1 level increase, I could. And this is a minor thing. You don't have to worry too much about it. But I could have made a better deal theoretically later with Battle Computer 2 than with Deep Space Scanner. You know, so something to think about when you make tech trades. You know, think about the tech level of what you're giving away. If it's not some special category like inertial stabilizer that's unusually highly prized. Okay, so ion cannons, like I mentioned, fusion bombs are amazing. They're very good tech, and so I picked them first because you don't get another increase in bombs until antimatter bombs, which is substantially further down. So, and fusion bombs are viable up until probably class 10 deflector 6 is probably your typical, and even then you'll still get some damage in, but it's just not worth it at that point. Especially factoring in a ship you've built that long ago when fusion beams were new, probably have bad battle computers, and the planets. And yes, this is something that a lot of people don't know. You can miss planets with your bombs. I think the idea is like I joked about. Not really joked. Well, kind of. Like I talked about before. I'm thinking that colonies are actually a tiny fraction of the people actually living on a given planet, especially habitable planets. You know, it's like there are clearly more than 100 million people, or 122 million people on our Terran planet, let alone in the 24th century. But, you know, so I think the idea is that you're actually missing the colony, and you're just doing random damage to cities and mountains, you know, firing your fusion bombs at making big craters like Dragon Ball Z, but not doing any actual damage, you know. But yeah, so your bombs can actually miss. They're counted as missiles, and they roll against missile defense. And yeah, planets automatically get the best jammers possible. So yeah, you may be missing with the handful of points of damage are actually sneaking in at that point. So you might as well not even bother. But for the time being, so if we can get beam ships with ion cannons, bombers with fusion bombs, class 2 or 3 deflector shields, and the sublight drives, that's gonna be the linchpin. Give us speed 2 in the combat screen. Give us warp 3 to get our ships to the front. Most importantly, transport speed 2 to hit the Mershon and grab some territory before they can reinforce it. That's going to be the kicker. That's what we really need. So that's the whole thing that goes into the mental math I'm doing. And that's why I'm periodically checking to make sure that my estimates are still valid. So we're seeing they have Hyper 10 rockets. It's very important for us to get Duralloy, get the extra hit points down. The difference in a cruiser gaining 50 HP when you have class 2 shields knocking 2 damage off. Let's say you go from 8 to 6. All of a sudden you go from, would be like 20 to be 160. So 19 shots to a couple more than that. That's not nothing, and you're going to be taking a couple hits going in because we weren't able to get inertial stabilizer. We could probably trade, if anybody else has it. I actually don't know if anybody else has it. We may be the only ones with it in our tree that we've met so far. We haven't met the Clackons yet. And in a lot of the games I've played, the Clackons will actually grab some of those Alkari planets, and they'll just be like right in your face. And that's like the one. That's the other factor that's making this game doable and less impossible than it otherwise is sometimes. Is just that the erratic Clackons haven't popped up yet to just randomly declare war on us with their stacks of hundreds of destroyers. So we're able to get that dead planet, and we're able to send some stuff out there in the Alkari sector. So this is actually looking a little promising. It is a medium galaxy, so there are a lot of stars in play, but you could expect, like, let's say you expect about the number of players or half the number of players worth an uninhabitable like asteroid belts. And so let's say I think there's 48 stars on a medium galaxy, and probably 4 of those are going to be asteroid belts. It's also possible nobody gets radiated tech, or the silicoids are here. They have radiated tech, but it's possible that there'll be some planets that aren't habitable either. We do have controlled toxic in our tree, so we can get all the way up to those. But let's say that you're kind of expecting everybody to get divided by 5, about 8 to 9 planets apiece before things settle out and you have to start killing each other. Well, the Clackons are probably already at 10 to 12 at this point because they had 6 so early and they have so much room to themselves. And I think we just now got 6. And some of our planets aren't very good. Now, some of theirs aren't going to be either. And it is possible that they get, no, it's not possible to get bottlenecked because I've seen them expand into our territory before. So we just got lucky this time around that we're able to get closer to our fair share, and the Clackons are getting a little bit less than theirs. So we may end up batting about the expected amount, batting average for this one, and that will give us a chance to try to cannibalize somebody else, take their stuff, and try to work our way to the game. The thing that makes Clackons so difficult in MOO1 is that unless they get screwed with the one planet empire syndrome, the OPEs, OG OPE, and which can happen to AIs because they don't get the same fail safes and map generation that the human player does. I think I mentioned that in the big introductory video. So it's possible for and I've actually seen this happen to the Clackons before, and it's funny how they still get gigantic fleets. They just run their planet ragged trying to afford it. But yeah, you can have an AI can definitely be in a situation where they don't have any habitable planets, and they're automatically respawning colony ships. They're just costing them maintenance. They get you just get dragged down with the maintenance costs. Can't really afford any techs. If they do use their impossible bonuses to get a decent fleet, it's all outdated junk that you won't have a problem with anyway. So that can happen to AIs. And one reason why I like this map and why if I didn't remember to, because it's been so long, it's been so short between them that I might have forgotten. If I didn't remember to solicit other hard maps on the impossible video, you feel free to let me know. Feel free to save them if you get any hard ones and let me take a stab at them. Because at a certain point, then a difficult map is the only real advantage you have, or is the only real way to get a hard game. But if you have a map that the player gets a fair draw, and the difficult AIs get a bad one, like you have the Clackons boxed in, the Cylons get no research and everything, the game just kind of becomes a cakewalk because you just have to survive long enough to get a tech advantage on the AIs that don't have any economic benefits either. And at that point, it just comes down to a macro management challenge that, if you're surviving Moo on Impossible, you're probably equipped to handle. um, oh, this is me doing a little bit of math on trying to decide between if I should wait the turn, because if you relocate a planet, then you get to move its speed on the enter turn. So, but you also have to go toward that planet, obviously. So if it would be further to move it there, basically if you would come out behind on the ship speed, descend it to another planet first, and then go to where you want it to go, then don't do that. So in this case, yeah, I descend to the same planet I'm already colonizing, just to get it close enough to grab that arid poor one I just scouted. And we just got lucky here that it looks like the Alkari aren't going to grab those planets. And the thing that may have saved our bacon there is that the Alkari decided to, and they're good at propulsion, and they usually prioritize it. And I don't think it's so much that the AI likes to prioritize the fields it's good at, just that it can, because I believe that the AI always equalizes spending. So they just happen to come out ahead in their chosen fields because they pay less for each upgrade. So they just start coming out ahead in them over time. But we just kind of lucked out that the Alkari kept choosing range upgrades instead of engine upgrades. So even if they wanted to turn around and grab that stuff in their back line, because they've probably already scouted it, then we're probably going to be there before they will, because their colony ships are probably way up north in Mershan territory. Okay, so we're starting to come up to the notice that they have neutron blaster there. I'm still scouting. I'm still kind of weighing in whether to leave the Mershan alone, deal with them later, because they're basically out of the game at this point. They keep losing planets, and they're at war with multiple AIs. And AIs play by the same rules you do. They just get unfair bonuses with them. So while they get I don't know actually what leads an AI to make those early game alliances in the first place. That's the mystery I have. I have no clue how I'm thinking that maybe they're allowed to make and offer alliances at any diplomatic affinity, whereas for a human player, they'll only accept if you're like, not affable, it's like calm or better, in order to even get a possibility of them accepting an alliance where the AIs don't have to worry about that. And that's also why they break them so easily, because they're still there's the money. Yep. So we do have a Robotics 3 in the tree. Oh, hey, and we have a council meeting too. So this is where we've actually fallen behind in population because the silicoids have been grabbing territory. So, and I believe 2/3 of 25, I believe, is 18, because it would be 16 to 24, so it's 17. So if I actually vote for Clackwan, I'm fairly sure he'll win. And I haven't met, I haven't met him yet. I've met Sediman. I think I voted for each of them once at this point. So, no, I voted for Clackwan, but I haven't met him. So I figure, okay, this will be a chance to get some points with Sediman if I need them later. So if I need to so he'll offer better deals if I, that was the whole reason I'm doing that. So the one awkward thing about post commentary. So I'm going to wait until he's actually, until the time comes to get my fleet ready to decide who to actually go after. But since he's at war with the Alkari and not the Mershan, if I do, and if that's still the case when I'm ready to attack, the Alkari may actually be a better choice, because the enemy is enemy of my enemy principle, and AI will love you a lot if you attack their enemy. If you attack somebody they're at war with, and they'll hate you. They'll start hating you if you attack somebody they're allied with. I think those are the only factors, though, diplomatically. So this is a lot. This is actually a lot for me to think about, but luckily we're coming up on the 1 hour mark, so I'm kind of ready to break for this one. Realize I'm in a decent position. If I start thinking about who to attack, I realize I'm in a playable position. So what I decided to do is we have terraforming 30, because like I mentioned before, what we were going for was the economic quadfecta. And So I'm thinking that since I'm bad at computers, I'm going to need to research robotics 3 first, put more of my points into there, and that means switching my preferred field from planetology to construction. You get that out of the way first, and then put the rest of the points into computers. So my plan is to go all in, or as close to all in as the challenge allows me, to get to robotics 3, grab that, start industrializing. We'll gradually industrialize, and then while I also go back and research terraforming 30, and I decided to grab terraforming 10 in the meantime to give me some more people to try to research faster, because every additional population is 2 more factories. It'll be 3 more factories whenever I get robotics 3 in there. It makes sense to grab that first, and 1 point of planetology levels isn't bad. So my plan is to grab those, do a big economic buildup. The turn before, and I'll describe this one when I get to the next update, or when I get the research. I assume I hope that'll be next update. Is basically to get both of those, go all in on research the turn before. You build up a big pool of points into weapons or whatever field I'm in, and then fully industrialize, then gradually trickle back into research while I'm industrializing. And then at that point, I should be ready to commit to the fleet and attack.